October 14th, live from Dallas, Texas. I am Steve Kennard. I'm the president of the AI Innovation Association, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Lee Bratcher, president of the Texas Blockchain Council. Lee, what have you been up to this week? I think you've been on the road.
Been on the road, got back late last night from Texas A&M.
Gig'em, that's right.
That's when I was waiting for it.
You teed me up on that. It's our year.
It is. Played tomorrow against South Carolina. It should be a good game.
Yep.
A&M is world renowned as a institution, primarily for engineering, for all sorts of different academic disciplines. But in this case, we were down there talking about the explosion of the data center infrastructure in Texas. They have an ERCOT simulated grid that they run down there and do a lot of testing. Incredibly boring for the layperson, because it was all electrical engineers talking about how ERCOT is expanding their footprint to accommodate data centers. But A&M, again, at the forefront of expansion of all these growth industries in Texas.
Boring, but crucially important.
Absolutely.
Right, and few can appreciate kind of the complexity of all the different scenarios that go into contemplating operating a grid the size of ERCOT for an economy the size of Texas that's booming right now, and trying to keep up with that. And glad to see my alma mater continues to lead in that area, and you were able to make it down there, and they continue to convene kind of all these experts, different perspectives, to actually deliver all of this power that we need as consumers, and then also with the data centers that we're trying to be a leading venue for that, while keeping that promise to people that, you know, the lights will still come on, power will be abundant and affordable. So important work. Thanks for doing that, Lee. I want to pivot now to the market headlines on this day, and you know, for market headlines, really for the week, I think we can say we're pivoting into full fear mode in the market, kind of red across the board. Finally, we're coming out of this government shutdown, and we were maybe hoping, okay, here's like some positive news, we'll turn a corner. That really hasn't been the case. With the government shutdown now in the rearview mirror, things have kind of pivoted to the perceived lack of a response from the Federal Reserve. We've seen major indexes down, technology leading the way in that. The big names, Tesla, NVIDIA, and Palantir, who are all kind of been Wall Street darlings, pulling back on this. And you know, as recently as October 27th, the odds that we saw that the Fed would cut rates again in December were at 90%.
Yeah.
Today, they're at about 50%.
Yep.
So significant change in market outlook around the rate policy from the Fed. I think that's a lot of what's driving the negative, the kind of fear attitude we see in the market. I want to highlight a couple of interesting kind of announcements as well. Verizon has made waves by launching an $11 billion bond deal to help finance its acquisition of Frontier. That's a big capital raise, so we continue to see that in the market. We haven't seen as much kind of activity and excitement around the debt markets. So this is a pretty big deal on the fixed income side. We'll see how that moves forward. You have Charles Schwab announcing it will acquire private markets platform Forge for $660 million. This is part of this broader narrative of less and less companies going public, more and more companies staying private for longer, and that institutional and retail demand to invest in these private companies. So you're seeing kind of household name here, Charles Schwab, making a foray into providing more of an on-ramp for investors to participate in private markets. I like it as an investment. I'm disappointed as an American that we can't have more companies go public the traditional way. I think that's what the Texas Stock Exchange and Dallas in general is trying to solve that problem. Another interesting deal, Team Shares is a company that focuses on helping private companies shift to being employee owned. So kind of buying it out from maybe the family that's owned a business for a long time, and then letting the employees take over ownership and providing a platform that facilitates that and all the accounting around that. They are going to list publicly through a SPAC deal led by T. Rowe Price, valuing that company at $746 million. And this is, I think, a welcomed another chapter in kind of non-traditional channels like the SPAC that are filling more and more the dearth, frankly, in the traditional IPO market. Another IPO that I do want to highlight, though, that we had a filing from Grayscale that was one of the very first leaders in terms of providing institutional access to the digital assets market. Grayscale filing for an IPO. I don't think there's a date on that yet, but we certainly are going to keep an eye out for that. Those are the market headlines for this week. A lot going on, and we continue to keep an eye on everything.
It certainly is, and even as we're talking, the percentage chance of a Fed decision to decrease rates is down to 46%. So even in
Wow.
the last 5 minutes, it's down 4%.
Yeah, I was updating this not an hour ago, so
Yeah.
that's remarkable.
It's fascinating to watch.
Yep.
Well, we have our first guest today, Ralph Safarian, who is a technologist, a thought leader, former senior vice president at Oracle, and now sits kind of in that chief revenue officer seat for multiple companies, is joining us to talk a little bit about TexCap, the conference that we hosted alongside our partners at SMU and AAPL a few weeks ago. We're going to update the audience on kind of the recap of that event. He's got some interesting things to share around some conversations, some executives who approached him at the event and asked him how they could get involved in this burgeoning Texas capital market scene. So Ralph, thanks for joining us. Absolutely. Wild week, to be sure. Well, Ralph, tell us a little bit more about your experience at TexCap. You had some interesting conversations that I wanted to share. Will allow you to share a little bit more.
Live stream. Can't hear the guest. I don't know. Shoot. I don't know why. Check the stereo. Can't hear him. See if you can
I like
adjust
it.
something there. Yes. One of you. I still can't hear him. Do this.
That's right. And we just 2 days ago we saw NASDAQ, of course, was at the event, but 2 days ago they announced NASDAQ Texas in the same vein as NYSE Texas, and so we're seeing them set up their kind of second global headquarters, the first one outside of New York, here in Dallas as well.
Yeah, big news.
So Ralph, tell us a little bit more about some of these conversations. How are you feeling like, as a former technology executive at Oracle and now an investor and thought leader, what would you say to a business person or an investor who says, where's my first step in getting involved in Texas capital markets? Say they're an investor or perhaps an investment banker. What would you recommend? And you said picks and shovels. Yeah, you said picks and shovels, Ralph. So let's think about those kinds of companies that are going to need to relocate here to Texas. I mean, Broadridge Financial Solutions does a ton of proxy and post-trade regulatory reporting. That's a massive company. They have a ton of presence in New York. I would imagine they are considering some sort of Texas presence. Of course, you've got the clearing companies, DTCC, and others that I'm sure are looking. I think those of us that like tokenization are hoping that DTCC gets put out of business one day. But
Yeah.
in the interim, they're going to certainly need to have a relationship and perhaps even a physical presence here in Dallas with the public exchanges. And then you have the markets and data analytics firms. I think Bloomberg would certainly be remiss if they didn't show up with a larger presence in Dallas. Are there others that, Ralph, you're thinking of, or Steve? Ralph, we'll go to you. Yeah, and I even saw a job posting. Actually, it wasn't a posting. Someone held this position at Texas Stock Exchange, head of data center operations.
Interesting.
So they're obviously thinking about their trading algorithms and clearing algorithms and how those will process. I think obviously if you're trading here in Dallas, you're not going to send those to the New Jersey data centers, and every millisecond counts in trading. So I would imagine those would be handled here in the DFW area.
I think that'll be a pressing question, is kind of where that ultimately is housed, and then you have different jurisdictions with different laws that present different kinds of risks. But New Jersey has been dominant in that data center space. Ralph, I'm curious, you kind of come from this mega corporation background, and then you've transitioned to kind of more of an entrepreneurial focus. And what we want to see a lot of in this kind of emerging Texas capital markets boom is a capital markets that serves more than just the mega corporations. I think that's the vision of decentralization that we spend a lot of time talking about. I wanted to get your perspective from having lived that firsthand and kind of what your near-term outlook is as we prepare for launch of the new exchange here, and sort of what do you think this next year, what does 2026 look like for you in terms of priorities or particular areas or maybe particular companies that you're engaging with? Just wanted to get your perspective on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
That's right. Well, Ralph, we appreciate you coming on and joining us on Texas Capital Live. I'm sure we'll have you back here in the near future.
Thank you, Ralph. Yes, sir. All right. I have we have an exciting kind of next plan here. And, we spend so much time talking about the future and innovation and new things and all of that. Sometimes it's nice to return to the old way of doing things. I enjoyed an early morning with the physical newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. I kind of got in here early. I was here all alone. It was just nice to sit down and flip through a physical paper, drink a hot coffee, get a highlighter out. But I will note that today's paper had a number of articles that actually really jumped out, and I was like, this is really, I think, worth discussing. And so wanted to take some time to bring back the old school physical paper, read a few articles, and let's just chat about this because I think there's some really incredible stuff going on. Front page of the Wall Street Journal today, Chinese hackers automated attacks using Anthropic's AI. Now, before I get into the article, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the background that's been going on with Anthropic. Anthropic's one of maybe 5 big American AI labs building foundation models. And they've been in the news for reasons they probably wish were not the case, which was the Trump administration, and particularly David Sachs, who's the AI czar, was calling them out for a lot of their political advocacy, sometimes in the public and also behind scenes, around government regulation of AI on the grounds of this is a threat, it presents a risk, and the government needs to increase its oversight. And I think AI safety is kind of the buzzword around that. Worth noting, Anthropic, I think, was the only major company that fairly early on was a supporter of SB 53 in the state of California, where they're headquartered, which was the California AI safety law that many AI companies were opposed to for its potentially onerous provisions. So that's kind of where Anthropic's been coming from. Now they're making headlines with a pretty astonishing event here, and from that